they rely on the state for their aviation. And I asked them, the command staff I was talking to, I said, and how long does that process take? And they said, well, it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Well, a lot can go on in an emergency operation in 30 to 60 minutes, where if you had a drone, you could deploy at least while they're en route.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 91. Have you ever wondered how drones are used in the public safety sector? Well, if you ask today's guest, he'd say drones provide a cost-effective alternative to other high-price equipment, and that they can provide a great ROI to local public agencies. Ryan English is president and co-founder of FLYMOTION Unmanned Systems, a full-service UAS company headquartered in Tampa, Florida. FLYMOTION delivers a range of UAS solutions, one of which is focused on the public safety industry. In addition to his military service and civilian operations background, Ryan is a successful entrepreneur. In this episode, Ryan talks about FLYMOTION, how drones are used in hazardous public safety situations, the value of drones to public safety organizations, and the challenges and rewards of starting a public safety drone-based business. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Ryan to introduce himself.
Yeah, my name's Ryan English. I'm the president, co-founder of FLYMOTION here in Tampa, Florida.
What does FLYMOTION do?
So FLYMOTION, we're an integrator and solution provider to the unmanned systems industry. So we work with a variety of clients, everything from public safety, energy, DoD, some government agencies, and some others that more industrial side and whatnot. And really what we do is we focused on utilizing the drone as a data capture tool or device. And so what we do is we bring together not only the drones, but the other solutions that are required for the operation, a successful operation of unmanned systems in the different vertical markets that we serve.
Would you consider public safety to be one of your primary areas of expertise?
I would say it's definitely a big portion of our business. We deal with public safety agencies around the country and have really become well known as subject matter experts. One of the things that I think is a little unique about us is we're not just a drone company that is looking at the products as, hey, they'll work for public safety, but we actually come from a public safety background. And so have actually been operational in these different environments. And so actually really, I think, have a better understanding of what is required and needed for public safety operations.
I think most people would go along with the idea that drones can find a role in the public safety arena. But what are some of the actual use cases that drones have for public safety agencies? What are they actually good at?
For example, in fire rescue, you now have the ability to have thermal imaging equipment and whatnot as a sensor on the drone. So you can be over for example, let's say it was a large structure fire, multi-alarm structure fire, identifying where the hot spots and where you need to position the ladder and truck crews, as well as the crews that are making entry. That's one application. Missing or endangered people, using it for a search and rescue type mission to be able to search large, vast amounts of land, where traditionally, if the agency didn't have a helicopter, they were pretty much stuck on just the ground and being able to cover the ground that way. With a drone, they can obviously cover much more ground. And there's also different zoom capability sensors. And also, as I mentioned, the thermal imaging, which then gives you the ability to see stuff that the naked eye can't. Also, the hazmat is becoming, drone is being utilized in that respect. And where that would be beneficial is, for example, let's say you may have a set of rail cars and you have one that is leaking, for example, and causes a exothermic reaction. Well, a lot of times you can't see that with the naked eye. So you would have to send out, hazmat crews, which takes a tremendous amount of time, anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes to get them, on scene, suited up, and start testing with some different meters to see where the leak is, where with the actual UAV, they can actually fly over rail cars and actually see very quickly within minutes where the leak may be. It can also be utilized in identifying, let's say you have a hazmat spill and, you don't want to put crews necessarily or out into the, what we would call the hot zone, or you want to assess it from a distance, which is always what we do on hazmat calls. And so you could then fly the drone up there with a high power, maybe a 30-time optical zoom camera, and be able to identify maybe if there's a placard or what the chemical looks like or whatnot, and really feed all that information back live back to the incident command post.
Are public safety agencies coming to you with a list of needs? Or do you find that the agencies are still trying to figure out if a drone will provide any value to them?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. Over the past few years, we've seen a big transition in public safety as far as how they're actually utilizing UAVs or how they want to utilize them. A few years ago, prior to August 29th of last year, when the FAA came out with Part 107, even though, for example, a public safety agency would operate under a public COA, there was still a lot of gray area and uncertainty in their minds as far as whether they could or could not utilize a drone. Since that time, even though they would still be operating the same way as they would have prior to August 29th with the public COA, there's been, a more clear perception on their end that now they can utilize drone technology, and you're starting to see a lot of departments start to come around utilizing it and seeing the very beneficial application. And obviously, it's, as I mentioned, much safer to put a piece of equipment out there in hazardous environment than risking personnel. So it's definitely, they are coming around. The vast majority of people that contact us, some literally are at ground zero where they have no knowledge whatsoever. They've just kind of maybe heard about it or seen the technology maybe in the media and whatnot. And so they're in the exploratory phase trying to figure out how they would utilize it in their day-to-day operations. And then we have those others that maybe they've purchased a drone and they really don't know how to get their program off the ground. So they'll come to us to really help them get that program going and up and operational and showing them how they can implement the drone into their daily operations.
In all of those cases, it sounds to me like they require both the expertise to fly a drone and the knowledge of the conditions and the hazards. What is your background with these types of situations, and what do you bring to the table to help public agencies in this area?
Both my business partner and myself, we started the company going on about 3 years ago. And prior to that, we came out of myself, I'll talk about first, came out of public safety, close to about 13, 14 years, working in a fire rescue capacity and also in law enforcement for the sheriff's office, and spent 8 years assigned to the SWAT team. So for a very large county. And then prior to that, I was active duty Coast Guard doing drug and migrant interdiction. My business partner comes from over 10 years in fire rescue for a large department as well, and in special operations on the Marine side there. So, as I mentioned, we both come from operational environments and actually understanding the way operations take place instead of just looking at the technology and thinking that, hey, this will be great and you can get an aerial perspective. It's so much beyond that. And obviously making sure that the departments understand how to operate this equipment. We don't see a drone as a piece of equipment that necessarily just gets put on a truck and, hey, a guy pulls it out if they need it every few months on a call or whatnot. We see this as a dedicated personnel that are assigned to UAV drone program within the agency that are obviously they're FAA certified under Part 107, as well as the department is operating under their public COA, and staying proficient on the systems, almost a specialty skill within the department. So they may be, let's say, a firefighter or paramedic, but they're also a drone operator within the agency. The departments that are doing it that way are the ones that are actually being successful with their programs and really having a program that is flourishing.
Does your public safety background make it easier for you to talk to police and fire officials about the use and the value of drones?
Yes, I would agree. Sometimes I guess it can be a hard shell to crack to get into kind of that, brotherhood environment that you have both on the law enforcement and fire rescue side. And, as I mentioned, both my business partner and myself come from many years working in that environment for some, very large reputable departments. And so I think that in itself holds a lot of weight, with these agencies that we meet with, because we come and we can actually talk to them, and they may talk about calls, for example, that they've been on, or, hey, how would this work in this environment? Well, we've probably been on one of those type of calls where it would have worked. As I mentioned, I spent past 8 years prior to starting the company on the SWAT team, and being able to understand tactical operations and how the workflow goes on a scene like that, and understanding where and how the UAV would be utilized in those applications from an operational perspective, I think is really kind of sets us apart from some of the others.
Is there a situation from your past where you can look back on and, based on your experience now, say that if I had a drone, I could have used it to solve that problem?
I think there's more than one, many incidents that I've been involved in that it would be tremendously beneficial. One that comes to mind is here in Hillsborough County, for example. We have both urban and rural areas, and out in some of the rural areas, there are occasionally some large brush fires, and been involved in several of those. And it's one of those things that previously we've had to call out the sheriff's office helicopter to get a aerial view and perspective of where it's burning, where the fire is traveling, where the hot spots are, so you can direct the ground crews. And, that's one application in itself that I think would be very beneficial. There's no sense tying up the sheriff's office helicopter. That's also one of those things that hopefully they're available. They're out on another priority one call. Maybe they have a perimeter secured for who knows what type of call. Then they're obviously not able to break away. And so having a drone out there in the field for those operations is very beneficial. There's been numerous other structure fires, large multi-alarm structure fires that would be very beneficial. And I can't think of one SWAT operation where it wouldn't have been great to have an aerial perspective, because a lot of times on those types of operations, we don't utilize helicopters because of it agitates the subject. They're noisy. And obviously it sometimes can be difficult for the ground guys to be able to talk. And a lot of times it's more of a stealthy operation.
How do you counsel agencies on the rollout and the ongoing maintenance of a program? Because, as you know, it's a lot more than just buying a drone and running some missions. What are some of the things that an agency needs to consider about running an ongoing drone program?
I think the biggest one is they need to fund it. That's one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing now is departments. We're getting a lot of command staff with some agencies that they look at some of these different systems and are kind of classing them more as toys based off of looks, not capabilities. First off, getting a program funded and supporting it, it goes beyond just the drone. And I can think of one agency, for example, that comes to mind that they looked at and they said, okay, how much is the drone and this and that? And they funded enough for the drone and the necessary equipment that went with it, but then they didn't budget for training. So, that would kind of be like, you given a 16-year-old a car and he's never had driver's ed. You have to have the training to go along with the systems in order to be successful. And those that have kind of not gone that route, it's, we've heard obviously some different crashes, and unfortunately, and some things like that, and ultimately what ends up happening is that happens. And then, the command staff is like, okay, yeah, this program is no good. And then it doesn't get revisited for quite some time. Now, obviously training, train, that's a huge one. And then, working with experts like us to identify the right systems. And when I say that is we've worked with a lot of different agencies that have just kind of maybe assigned a person within the agency, hey, go find this out. Maybe they don't really know a lot about unmanned systems, but they're doing their best with what information they have. And they go out and search, and maybe they see a particular product that's maybe $1,500 or something like that. And they and they purchase that. And yes, they get an aerial perspective, but that's as far as it goes. For public safety and emergency operations, you need sensors, a little bit more robust equipment, getting into, as I mentioned, high power zooms, thermal imaging, and some things like that. And a lot of times it can be sometimes challenging to, when you show a department, for example, well, here's a $1,500 system and this does this, but it just gives you a camera and live video down to your ground control station. Or here's a system and it's got a 30x zoom on it. It's got clear and it does all this other stuff that the other one can't, but the price tag is much higher. And a lot of times we see departments that they'll go for the less expensive piece of equipment, but then what ends up happening is they now end up spending more money because they start with that less expensive piece of equipment based off a budget, but they eventually come around and see, okay, yeah, now we've got to have this other stuff. We realize that this is, we need a more robust system with these different sensors and things like that.
Do you see any difference between public safety agencies that have an air service component versus those that do not? Any differences in the way they approach a drone program?
If they have an aviation unit, traditionally, there are a few fire departments or fire rescue agencies throughout the country that have helicopters, but it's very few. So traditionally, we would probably be speaking with a law enforcement agency that had an aviation component. And really, it's kind of almost been 50-50. You have some that the aviation guys, and I think it's unfortunate that they think like this because they look at it, hey, this is possibly going to replace my job, and it's definitely not that. What it is, it's a complementary tool to their current operations because, as I mentioned, if we look just here in the Tampa Bay area, for example, there's pretty much every large agency in the Tampa Bay area has multiple helicopters, and they're fantastic. They have great capabilities. But there may be those times where you don't need to send out a full-size helicopter, with two pilots and this and that to go out to a scene, or they may already be out on a call and another incident comes out, and it's one of those things that they are not able to respond because they're tied up on another call. So being able to have this less expensive equipment that they can deploy, such as a drone, in a quick fashion, and then once aviation gets freed up, they can then come and relieve, if needed, the drone operators. The one thing that I will tell you related to departments that have aviation units and the ones that are accepting of the technology and what it can do for them have really been able to get up and operational much quicker, I would say.
Yeah, and something that you said goes back to a point you made earlier about choosing the right application. Because a drone isn't going to replace helicopters or other aviation units. But once agencies figure it out, they'll know what tool to use for a particular situation. On one day, a drone might be perfect, but on another, it may not be of any use.
Exactly. And a drone it's a fantastic tool that public safety probably would have never imagined, if you would have said 5 years ago that they would be utilizing this technology, but it's revolutionizing a lot of the operations and things that they can do now that they previously could never do. And the question that you posed was about departments that have aviation units. Well, there's a lot of departments throughout this country, they don't have an aviation unit, and they maybe rely on the state or another local agency for that helicopter. And that obviously becomes another issue. Another department that we were working with, for example, recently, they rely on the state for their aviation if they need to call out aviation. And I asked them, some of the command staff I was talking to, I said, and how long does that process take? And they said, well, it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Well, a lot can go on in an emergency operation in 30 to 60 minutes, where if you had a drone, you could deploy at least while they're en route. To me, it's much more effective operation.
Do you provide any public outreach or education to help the public safety community understand the benefits of using a drone?
So we do a vast amount of demos for them. We are actually in the process of putting together, it's going to be most likely probably at our office, maybe at an alternate location. We're unsure yet, but we are in the process of putting together kind of exactly that, a one-day informative session where public safety agencies can come in and, really learn about the technology, touch, feel, see it firsthand, get their hands on it and whatnot, because that's one of the things that we continue to see is, for example, the agencies that haven't implemented a program yet is they have somebody in the department that's really interested in, it's like, oh, it's great and this and that, but obviously maybe they don't have the equipment that they can just go and show the command staff. And so being able to show some of the people firsthand how it works and show them in some different scenarios and whatnot, we see is very beneficial.
Based on the feedback that you get from public agencies, what are the top 2 to 3 questions they have when they come to you?
A lot of it, I guess, depends on at what level, who we're talking to at the agency. On the command staff side, they want to obviously know how much it's going to cost them. They also want to understand the FAA rules and regulations, what they can and can't do, and probably being able to, how can they tie this back to the incident command, or can they view some of the video feeds remotely? That's another very common question.
Since you're based in Florida, do you get many calls about using a drone after a hurricane or a tropical storm?
The last major storm that we had was Hurricane Matthew. Here, at least in the state of Florida, under the state, there was no drones utilized. We actually, personally, we had 15 guys deploying in 3 different areas, but the state Incident Command Center had stood us down actually as we were getting ready to head out. The restoration efforts were going much better than they expected. But disaster, a recent incident would be, for example, up till, now they didn't have a system, but now they do. But in Pasco County, we saw into last year where they had tremendous amount of flooding, and the emergency management director actually got on, live news media and was asking, hey, if anybody has a drone, can they come and help us try to see an aerial overview? And now obviously Pasco County has their own system, but that would be one example related to the disaster, natural disaster.
A little more about the company and its story.
Sure.
How did you decide to go out on your own and start FLYMOTION?
So as I mentioned, both my business partner and I both come from a lot of years in public safety, and going on a little over 3 years ago, I subscribed to Inc. and Wired and Entrepreneur magazine, and I was reading an article. I don't recall which magazine it was, because I get them all, but I was reading in there, and it was kind of talking about the future drone technology and this and that, and so I started kind of researching a little bit more, and it initially was kind of a joke, and my business partner and I also own another company, and I sent a picture of a small drone and sent it over to him, said, hey, check out my new toy I'm going to order. So I ended up ordering a system, around $1,000, $1,200, whatever it was. We had it for about a week or so and did some different aerials and said, wow, this could be, revolutionize public safety is obviously what we were initially thinking about because of our background in it. So we decided, we played with it for about another week or so and decided to set up a company and go full steam ahead. And here we are 3 years later. We just, moved into our new facility in Tampa, and things are going very well.
Everyone knows that starting a company always has ups and downs before you get to an even keel. Can you talk about some of the key challenges that you had to overcome in starting this company?
For us, we're entirely self-funded, so we didn't have any outside investors. So that in itself, I think, was challenging, where we wanted to take the company. I think, obviously, if we would have had maybe some type of investment or something like that, we probably could have done that much quicker. But, we chose to bootstrap, and obviously there's a lot of reward in that. That in itself, I think, was challenging because at the end of the day, it's kind of like gambling, rolling the dice, and you put as much hard work into it as you can, and you hope for the best. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it's your personal money that is on the line. And, I think that was one challenge. One other challenge that we had is scaling our business. Initially, we needed more people to bring on, but obviously we weren't bringing in the revenues at that time. So that in itself presented some challenges because several of us are working, 80, 100 hours a week trying to get stuff done and do as much as we can. And so I think that was definitely challenging.
What's the outlook for the rest of 2017?
We're super excited about it. This is coming into year 3, actually in April. So definitely I would say, we're over the hump, and, we've got some products we're working on. One is our mission case, which has to do with our vehicles and kind of bringing that into a more portable solution for departments and clients that we work with. We also are working on a couple specialized projects with counter UAS, which is becoming another big industry. So a lot of new and exciting stuff that we'll be kind of announcing over Q1 and Q2 of this year that we're involved in and are getting involved in. So definitely excited about that.
That sounds great. Congratulations. Now, switching gears a little, on the website, I see that FLYMOTION makes custom command vehicles for public agencies. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about those vehicles and what they're used for?
Yeah, so currently the vehicles, as you mentioned, are both our Maverick and our Trident system. Maverick being our SUV-based platform, our Trident being our van or larger vehicle-based platform. And, where, as I mentioned early on in our conversation, is we really felt that the drone is a tool to data capture device. And at the end of the day, command and control, especially on any type of medium or large operation, is critical. And that's kind of where our vehicles came about. Is, we saw the vision early on that, the drone was just going to be one device. It's up there capturing the aerial perspective. You may have some ground robots on the ground. You may have some stuff underwater, subsurface systems. You may have other video feeds, and bringing all that stuff into one central hub, hence our command and control vehicles, and then being able to disseminate and transmit that information live to different incident commanders that may not be on the scene. They could be anywhere in the world. We send everything IP-based. And so really involving the whole command staff into the operation, having the incident commanders, really utilizing the latest technology and being able to see and communicate with the operation guys that are conducting the overall operation.
And the vehicles don't actually have to have a drone to provide the benefit of command and control, right? If an agency has a drone, it can be controlled out of the vehicle. But if not, the vehicles still provide the value of a mobile incident command center. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And we also, one of the questions that we get a lot is, in order to have a drone, I have to have the vehicle. No, that's not the case. Obviously, the vehicle is command and control. We've got a great relationship with a department out in California, and they just were involved in a large incident out there. And they basically, I got a text from one of the guys and he says, we definitely learned some things here that we need a command and control vehicle because of just the type of operation and being able to, have multiple UAVs, drones in the air and kind of communicating that stuff back. But yes, it could be used as a standalone command and control vehicle, or it could be utilized for, obviously, as I mentioned, robots, ground robots, UGVs, UAVs, USVs, all that stuff, and everywhere in between. And those vehicles they're just a example. Those are our demo vehicles. Those are just an example of the capabilities that we have. Obviously, we can't, unfortunately, show every single piece of equipment or configuration that we would do, but pretty much we start with a blank slate and they are configured to the client's request. And now one of the latest things that we actually haven't even officially announced, but it is available, is now our tethered system for the DJI Inspire can now integrate into our vehicles. So you could actually have a 200-foot permanent tethered drone up in the sky off of your vehicle, or it doesn't have to be out the vehicle. It could also be in its case, but definitely a nice tool to have there.
That comes in handy, I bet, especially when you need to have those long flight times.
Yes. Yeah. And no battery changes. And obviously on an emergency scene, there may be, operations that you don't want to take eyes off. So being able to have that up there permanently and just keep it going is a huge benefit.
Do you do much consulting work with public agencies?
Yes, we deal a lot with, that's probably one of the biggest things that we do with departments is consulting with them is initially where it starts. And then we get into different equipment acquisition and training and things like that. But consulting is definitely a big one because, it's new technology and they've heard a lot of noise out there and, really coming to subject matter experts that can really kind of steer them in the right direction. And, we have a variety of different solutions that we offer personally, a lot of different manufacturers that we're involved in. And we also are on the integration standpoint if they need a custom system. And so it's one of those things I think we bring a lot of value as we are consulting with them.
That's really great, Ryan. And for my final question, what would you like to say to public agency officials that might be thinking about starting a drone program?
So basically all the public safety listeners out there, it would be one of those things that I just want you to know that drone technology is the future. It can definitely revolutionize the way you conduct and do your operations, especially on emergency scenes. And so it's one of those things that if you have questions, reach out to somebody. We're here to help. We take phone calls every single day from departments and emails, and, we're happy to provide the information so you can really get a clear picture and understanding of how drone technology can be utilized in your department.
That's it for episode 91 of the Drone Radio Show podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Ryan English of FLYMOTION Unmanned Systems and learning how drones can support local public safety organizations. I want to thank Ryan for sharing his expertise and experience. If you want to learn more about FLYMOTION or want to connect with Ryan, check out the website at FLYMOTIONUS.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a positive review on iTunes. It always helps. And I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.